Hello, my name is Caleb Spiller, and this is my musical timeline project for music appreciation. Before we begin, I'd like to apologize if my microphone volume is a tad bit too loud, as I do not yet have a dedicated microphone for my computer. Besides this, let us begin. First, we must begin with the Middle Ages. This spans from 450 AD to 1400 AD. Composers include, but not limited to, Hildegard of Bingen, who was born in 1098, Bermschirm, Germany, and died in September 17, 1179, in Rupertsberg, Germany. Leonin is also another composer of this period, who was born in 1135, Paris, France, and died in 1201, also in France. As I stated earlier, there are many other famous individuals from the Middle Ages, but I've included these two specifically. Now, moving on to the Middle Age instruments. Now, instruments during this time were mostly used to support vocals, such as singing and, dancing. Simple designs like harps, flutes, and drums also helped with the melody of this era of music. Music instruments also included during this era are flutes, fiddles, bagpipes, psalteries, and, of course, as I previously mentioned, harps. Some history of the Middle Ages is that the Middle Ages, again, were a period that spanned more specifically from 476 AD to 1400. During this period, this music was mostly controlled by the church, with chants and hymns being the primary forms of music. As we discussed earlier, instruments were also vital to music during this time period. But something specific and quite interesting about this time period is that this is where we saw the rise of musical notation and where it would become more sophisticated as time went on. Minstrels, who were essentially performers that went from village to village, also brought music outside of the church for commoners to enjoy. We now move into the Renaissance period, which spans from 1400 to 1600. Some composers include Giovanni Perluigi da Palestrina, who was born in 1525 and died in 1594, Orlando di Lasso, who was born in 1532 and died in 1594, and Thomas Tallis, who died in 1585 and was born in 1505. This period of music was about creativity and expression. Composers during this time period wanted more harmony and balance in their music, writing both sacred and secular music, which essentially means that, similar to the period that came before the Renaissance, aka the Middle Ages, they were trying to bring music outside of the church. And also, which is quite interesting about this period, is that individuals of this period were quite interested in the curiosity and culture that surrounded themselves, and they wanted to implement that into their music during this period of time. Here we have some interesting instruments that were created during this time period because they were both experimenting with old and new formulas. So we have the slide trumpet, the rebec, the lyre, the tambourine, and the recorder. Some history about the Renaissance. As we know, the Renaissance was a period of music ranging from 1400 to 1600. Again, there was a great shift towards experimentation. They wanted to try different things and bringing music outside of the church. Things like madrigals were becoming more common in common places such as just villages and courts. And the rise of the printing press made it easier for amateur composers to dabble in music as well and share it around at a wider scale compared to previous moments in history. Now we move into the Baroque period, which was a time of music that spanned from 1600 to 1750. Some composers include Henry Purcell, who was born in 1659 and died in 1695, Domenico Scarlatti, who was born in 1685 and died in 1757, and Jonathan Sebastian Bach, who was born in 1685 and died in 1750. The Baroque period was a period of drama and complexity. And this is actually fitting because this period was where the opera was created, which mixed in music with telling a story through theater. This period we saw more instruments specifically catered towards strings and brass and percussion. So you see things such as the violin, the oboe, the contrabass, the trumpet, and of course, the flute also makes another reappearance. Again, the Baroque period was big, bold, and dramatic. The opera was something that rose to popularity during this time period, which is fitting because of its focus towards drama. Although there were some individuals that lived beyond this period, this specific period in history ended with the death of Bach in 1750. We now move into the classical period, which spans from Bach's death in 1750 to 1820. Some composers include Joseph Haydn, who was born in 1732 and passed away in 1809, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who was born in 1756 and died in 1791, and Franz Schubert, who was born in 1797 and died in 1823. The classical period was about elegance and structure, clarity, order, and balance. This period of time gave rise to symphonies, sonatas, and concertos, which are still very popular today. This period of time did not really see a rise in much of any real new instruments. They mostly stuck to the things that were already created, such as the violin, the flute, and the oboe. However, this period is quite interesting, as you'll see in the next section about its history. The classical period, again as we know, was focused around elegance and simplicity compared to the previous eras of musical history. Orchestras grew grander, and unlike the Baroque period, the classical period was more focused towards harmony and simplicity. So it strayed away from more complex musical creations. And this period of time had more focus also towards human values, which was aligned to their interest in the workings of things such as ancient Greece. We now move into the Romantic period, which is a period of time that spanned from 1820 to 1900. Some composers include Johannes Brahms, who was born in 1833 and died in 1897, Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, who was born in 1840 and died in 1893, and Frédéric Chopin, who was born in 1810 and died in 1849. The Romantic period was about emotions. They wanted to tell emotions through their stories, which was through their music. They wanted to captivate the audience and make them feel emotions toward their music. It was all about personal feelings. It was about expressing oneself through their musical works. They wanted to paint vivid imagery through their music, which is quite fascinating compared to almost any other period of time, which gained the title of the Romantic period. In this period, the piano grew in size and in range, and orchestras expanded even further. We can see that the instruments of this period actually fit with the overall tone of this period, as we can see the piccolo, the trombone, the French horn, the tuba, and the clarinet find their way into the musical pool during this period. As I said earlier, the Romantic period saw a shift from merely notes on the sheet music to emotional expression. Composers during this time period wanted to express themselves through their music, merely than putting notes on a sheet of paper. Beethoven was known for pioneering a less structural approach while also adhering to the period beforehand, that being the classical period. However, creating a more vivid experience through sound compared to any period that come prior. The 20th century is a period of music that spanned from 1900 to 1999. Some composers include Igor Stravinsky, who was born in 1882 and died in 1971, Dmitri Shostakovich, who was born in 1906 and died in 1975, and Leonard Bernstein, who was born in 1918 and died in 1990. The 20th century, it would do little justice to simply say that it was a monumental leap, not only in musical style, but in how artists approached their work. This period saw a great reshape in how music was formed, but not only how it was formed, but how it influenced the masses in a whole, which will be explained further in the history section. In the 20th century, there wasn't much creation in terms of musical instruments. However, due to the advancements in technology, we were able to get things such as the electric guitar, synthesizers, and the electric piano. The synthesizer actually being a new invention during this period. However, most things stayed the same, with tweaks, of course, being made. The 20th century brought, again, an unprecedented change in music in every form and fashion. Due to the invention of record players and the radio, people could sit at home and enjoy music without having to go out and hear it at perhaps a concert or having to go out into their town to hear such music. We had new styles of music such as jazz, new jack swing, pop, rock, and blues, and many others flourished. Many individuals took the medium of music and combined it with dance and combined it with film, which gave birth to things called music videos. One of, if not the most influential people who created the start of the music film industry being the king of pop, Michael Jackson. This brings an end to my project. Thank you for watching, and these are the sources that I have cited on this page. Thank you, and have a good day.